Now, in the United States on Monday, the Trump administration announced it was freezing more than $2.2 billion in grants and $60 million in contracts to Harvard University, one of the country's most elite institutions. The move came after the Harvard president refused to comply with Donald Trump's demands to limit activism on a campus. And for more on that story, I'm joined by Emerald Maxwell. Emerald, first of all, Harvard is really the first American university to sort of push back and refuse to comply with Donald Trump's requirements. How did it justify its refusal?
Well, yes, it's the first to stand up to the Trump administration, which perhaps isn't surprising given that it's the oldest, the most prestigious, the richest university in the United States. And in a letter to students and faculty, the Harvard president, Alan Garber, vowed to defy the government, insisting that the college would not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Neither Harvard nor any other private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government. And this is fighting talk from a university that was seen to be sort of placating the Trump administration till now. And Alan Garber continues that Harvard is committed to fighting anti-Semitism and that over the past 15 months, it has undertaken substantial changes to ensure it's a welcoming environment for all. Continuing, it's unfortunate then that the Trump administration has disregarded Harvard's efforts and instead presents demands that invade university freedoms. And this meaning the administration's lengthening list of demands in its letter to Harvard on Friday, which was published by the New York Times, which included reporting students to the federal government who are hostile to American values, ensuring each academic department is viewpoint diverse, hiring an external government-approved party to audit programs and the departments that most fuel anti-Semitic harassment. And this expanded on a list that Harvard had already received from the administration earlier this month, which ordered officials to shut down DEI programs, as well as cooperate with immigration authorities for screenings of international students. Ketivan.
Now, Harvard and other American universities have long been targeted by Republicans, by Trump officials for their sort of left-wing ideologies, but specifically since the protests last year, the pro-Palestinian protests against the war in Gaza, they've been accused by Republicans and Trump officials of rampant anti-Semitism on campus.
Yes, that has been one prong by the Trump administration, which set up an anti-Semitism task force in order to scrutinize universities and pressure them to reassess their policies. And this task force reacted to Harvard's statement on Monday, saying it reinforces the troubling entitlement mindset that's endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges. But the administration's attacks on US universities is actually about much more than anti-Semitism. As you said, it's part of its broader war on woke ideology, which it says has taken over campus. And it's an effort to correct this liberal tilt, push its own ideology, especially in the most elite universities like Harvard. Critics say it's simply an attack on academic freedom.
Now, Harvard is not the only university that's been asked to make these changes. How have other universities reacted?
So since taking office, the administration has aggressively targeted universities, using taxpayer dollars to do so, and the argument that universities are out of step with Americans' concerns. And before today, they'd already suspended hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for research at universities across the country. For instance, last week, Cornell University had more than $1 billion frozen, Northwestern about $790 million. This while the government investigates alleged civil rights violations at the campuses. Some of it, though, is more targeted, like at Princeton University, which had $4 million frozen from its Climate Change Research Fund, or AXT rather. So many today are celebrating Harvard's defiance. People like Senator Bernie Sanders, who posted on X that other universities should follow its lead. It will be interesting to see whether they actually can afford to, because some of these universities, the wealthier ones like Princeton, will be able to navigate this funding loss, but not all. US universities have other sources of funding, such as tuition fees and endowments from individuals or companies. But the amount depends also partly on whether they're public institutions like UCLA or Berkeley, or private institutions like Harvard or other Ivy League institutions. And of course, the majority of universities aren't Harvard. They don't, which is not only the wealthiest in the US, but also in the world. The 2.2 billion frozen is a fraction of the 9 billion that it receives in federal funding. And it also has an endowment of around $53 billion. So the administration has had some success with its stick approach. And last month, after it pulled $400 million in federal funding from Columbia, the university agreed to a number of White House demands, or capitulated as some might see it, including installing new oversight of its Middle Eastern Studies Department and creating a security force empowered to arrest and remove people from campus. Meanwhile, putting more pressure on universities is the fact that polling shows that confidence in them among Americans is falling, and that's across the board, but particularly among Republicans, and that's partly driven by a growing belief that universities are pushing a political agenda.
Emerald Maxwell, thank you very much for your analysis. And as we were discussing, the United States administration really targeting universities, but also going after students. U.S. authorities have now arrested another Palestinian student from Columbia University for his role in protests against the war in Gaza. Mohsen Mahdawi arrived in the United States in 2014, has held a green card since 2015, and he believed that he was going for an interview to finalize the process to get U.S. citizenship when he was taken by ICE agents at an immigration office in Vermont. On Monday, a district judge ordered the Trump administration not to deport Mohsen Mahdawi, but so far his lawyers say that they do not know where he is.